Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We're excited to have one of our own application consultants with us, Marguerite Manelski. She's going to be presenting on, do I really need warehousing? And as a reminder, we are recording this webinar and we will post it to our on-demand webinar library for you to review again or share with anyone. And we just want to encourage you to ask any questions that you have during our presentation. So please feel free to type them into the questions box and we will get them answered during our Q&A time at the end of our session. So now I'm going to turn it over to Marguerite to kick off our presentation.
Hello, Angie, and welcome everyone. So today we're going to kind of just talk about warehousing and do we really need warehousing? So before we get started, just to give you a little bit of background on myself, my name is Marguerite Manelski. I have been with Innovia a little over 2.5 years. I spent approximately 12 years on the partner side. I have lived and breathed almost every aspect of NAV. Started as just a plain old parts puller, worked my way up to the official title was Director of Business Intelligence, a very fancy name for a NAV admin. Really found a little niche in purchasing, but did spend some time in our shipping area as a shipping supervisor and was involved in our upgrade from 5.0 to NAV 2015 while adding ISV functionality. Now, you may question, why is ISV functionality even part of this, and why are you telling me? Well, that's going to come up here momentarily, but before we get started, I kind of wanted to just point out, when we think of a warehouse, we kind of think of just a very basic, I receive the parts, I put them away, I pick them, I ship them, and that's the end of it. And we don't think about the different things that go into that. A lot of times we're not involved in that. If we're sitting in the warehouse, we are just doing these jobs. And the people that are responsible in making decisions for how the warehouse functions normally are not the people that are living in the world of warehousing. So how do we bring those two pieces together? Well, one of the first things that we really have to think about is, what is our line of communication between our warehouse and the person or multiple people that are making the decisions for our warehouse? Oftentimes I find, myself included, is decisions are made without the input of a warehouse. How do we function? How do I see things working today, and how can I improve them? As somebody who sits at a desk, they're just going, yep, our warehouse needs to do this. And as the person in the warehouse doing the job, we're screaming and pulling our hair out and saying, why in the heck am I doing it this way? This is crazy. And oftentimes we hear that our voice is not heard or feel it, so we stop communicating that information. And that is one of the biggest things within a warehouse and really throughout the business, is that communication. So with that being said, let's first have a conversation about warehousing. What is warehousing? Oftentimes people hear words being thrown around such as basic and advanced. Now, most of us, when we think of advanced, we're thinking these big old fancy warehouses like Amazon. And that's not necessarily the case of what an advanced warehouse is. Your base warehouse has things such as your locations. These are your physical buildings, and how are they configured? Now, base nav has functionality for warehousing. We have what is called a basic warehouse, and we have what is called advanced warehousing. Your basic is just very basic. It's touching on your item ledgers. It's just kind of recording that information for you. But your advanced warehousing, which does exist within your base nav, it has things such as your location setups. Again, these are physical locations. One thing that is often thrown around in the world of warehousing is the word location. Now, depending on who you are talking to, that wording can mean several different things. If you're a person standing in the warehouse pulling parts and someone says, I need you to go to this location, that normally means you're going to a bin, a rack, a shelf, something where the items are physically stored. But when you're talking to somebody within your office, when they say location, they're probably referencing your physical location in the fact of an address. So you may have locations throughout the city, you may have them throughout the country, you may have them throughout the world. So what ends up happening when we have things that are spread out through multiple locations? Well, within our base nav, we want to set up our advanced warehousing. So again, it's still base nav, but we've now changed that word from basic to advanced. And this is going to have things such as your zones. Now, what's a zone? Well, it's it's just a very standard term. These are your areas of your system, such as shipping, receiving, storage, and pickable. You could have a quarantine area. Depending on your business, you could be required to do inspections. You may quarantine material because of where it traveled from, maybe because it came from a specific overseas vendor. It needs to be quarantined due to exposure. There are so many different things that come into play, and those are important when setting up your location. We need to think about your zones. And within our zones, we have bins. Now, bins are those physical locations within your physical building. So a lot of people always question, how do I set up bins? How do I find a good way? You have to look at the flow of your warehouse. Now, some people use a bin such as 1, 2, 3, and their warehouse is very small and they can determine where that is. Some people use just based off of an aisle number, and it is, just 1 through 47. And once you're in that aisle, hopefully it's not too long and you can find where your material is. Now, what I was used to and what I always have suggested is you want to have it filter down as much as possible within that bin. So you create bins such as an aisle number with a specific bay, and then within that bay, you have a shelf. So example would be an aisle that you have labeled as 12. You have 5 bays. Each bay is 6 feet long, and you have 7 shelves that go up 12 feet. So you would have something such as aisle 12, bay A, shelf 2. And this will help you determine where to put your material, where to pull your material. Now you're also seeing things that I am referencing such as bin ranking. Now these are things that come into play really as you dive deeper into your warehousing. And right now we're just kind of touching on the basics, but these things such as picking priority will help the system know where to put material and where to pull material from. Example being is if you have 2 bins that you store material in, you have a bin that is easily accessible to a person who walks up on it and they can pull their material. But you have what sometimes is called overstock. It's a completely pickable bin, but it's maybe requires a ladder. So you don't want your users going to that bin as often as they would the floor bin. So you can actually assign a priority so that the system knows go to the location that is easily accessible first before going to another location. This can also be used to help determine how you stock your material. Excuse me. So the system can actually help with setups determine I'm running low on this material. I need to now look into moving from that high location that requires a ladder, let me pull 15 pieces down, put them into this floor location, and now it's fully stocked again. You're keeping your people efficient because they don't have to go up and down the ladder as often. You are taking away, hopefully, more ability for an accident because now instead of going up the ladder 15 times, they're only going up the ladder one time. It's things like this that we have to think about with our warehouse. Now you're also seeing something such as cubage and weight. These are the things that can be used to help assign where to put material. Now, most of us probably have lived in a world, if we're not still currently living in it, where we function on a, if it fits, it goes. I kind of look at that as the pet cat. If I fits, I sits. And that's kind of how warehousing is in most companies. If it fits, it goes there. Doesn't matter if it makes sense that it goes there, but I put it there and that's where it is. The system will be able to use these cubage and weights to start determining how much room do you have. If I have 13 cubic feet left in that bin, but this shipment is 55 cubic feet, well, am I putting 30 cubic feet in that location with the balance 25 going someplace else? Or do I need all of that 55 put into one specific location? Same thing with weights. We may be looking again at how do we want the weight to come into play? Do I want material that's super heavy way up high? Do I want it low? Do I need a pallet jack to get it? Do I need the tow motor? All these things can start coming in, and these can be things that are used also within your zones, your bins, your bin priorities, all pieces that come into play with how we assign our warehouse. So a big one that plays within a warehouse, and this is how do I really need to use a warehouse, is we fall into these situations where as a company, we just go, I'm one location, I'm one building, I'll post when I get to it. I trust my inventory, it's whatever. Well, what happens is we have two setups that we really, really love. And one is our prevent negative inventory. Now you may ask, what does that have to do with our warehouse? Well, it may feel like nothing, but by allowing the system to prevent negative inventory, you are having better control in your warehouse of the location of your inventory. Do I actually have it? Do I need to prepare a location for an incoming purchase order? Sometimes companies will run in negative inventory, and a lot of times what we see is we have that, oops, I forgot to post it. And now it's 4 years later and you realize you never invoiced $2,000 to a customer. Most likely, if you try to invoice them now, they're going to laugh at you and tell you, I'm not paying it. Sorry, that's the way it is. So when we're setting up our locations and we're setting up and prepping for our inventory and warehouse, we want to kind of think about that. Do we want the ability to have our inventory go negative? Or do we want to force our users to do all the steps before they can post? Now, the other one that we have on this screen is location mandatory. And you see I have this set to yes, and I indicate we always want to set this to yes. Now, some of you may be raising your hands, scratching your heads and going, I have one location. Why in the world would I want to set this to yes? Well, one of the biggest things in a warehouse, and this is again, communication between your warehouse and your people that are making decisions for your warehouse comes into play. What is our long-term goal? Most companies are not thinking, my long-term goal is I'm one building, I'm paying the bills, and when I retire, the company's gone. That's not normally the conversation or the thought process. Everybody wants to expand. Do we think it will happen? Depends on the company. But we want to have that mindset that our business is going to be just amazing. COVID's going to go away, and whatever product we have, is just going to the consumers are going to need it, they're going to want it, and they're going to love it. And we're just going to grow our business. So what's going to happen is we're going to need to put in multiple locations. So how do we prepare for that when we don't have those answers? The first thing is we want to make a location mandatory. What this is going to do is on our posting, it's going to require things to be filled in on our sales orders, on our shipments that just says, I shipped this from Ohio. It's nothing. What you've done is you've now started affecting your item ledgers, and it's going to start recording that you are shipping out of a specific location. This will help down the road if you ever implement a second location, third location, because now you're not trying to figure out, well, which location is that inventory in? When a new location comes up, we can easily transfer it, or we can receive it to those other locations without hesitation. Now, the next piece that we see, again, this goes right back to, do I need to do this to make a warehouse function? Bin mandatory. Now, everybody kind of is doing the same thing. I don't use bins. We're one aisle today. I got 20 parts. I'm a small, tiny little business, but I hope to grow. That's my long-term goal. I don't have an answer for my time frame, but I do hope to grow. So let's put on a bin mandatory. We don't have to have a ton of bins. We don't have to have all this bin and that bin, and I store it here and I go here. All we have to do is create one bin, one bin, and we just call it number one. It's not a big deal. It's just allowing the system to start capturing that information so that as your business grows, now you've leased another part of your building and you've put up 2 additional aisles. Now you can start making the adjustments to represent all of those things that are no longer stored in bin 1. Now they're stored in bin 5. Your business will already be in the mindset that you're using bins, you're posting bins, you're putting away to bins. And that helps that as the business grows, you're not changing processes. I sit there and say, I lived, I breathed all these things. I was fortunate enough, I walked into a business, we already ran things like bins. But when it came time to go to an upgrade, all of a sudden, everything we thought we knew changed. Not because we changed our system, not because we went to, from 5 to 15, but now we had this great idea. We're going to pull in ISVs. We're going to use, a shipping module. We're going to use a receiving module. Now we have all these other changes going on. Our heads are spinning. We don't know how to do our jobs now. But what we still know how to do is we know how to receive our inventory. Maybe not the process of how to receive it, but we know that we put certain things in a specific location, and we do need to somehow record, whether manually, through the system, through a scanner. We need to know how to put it to a bin. So our business grew, our processes changed to some degree, but the bones of our business stayed the same. And it made the transition so much easier because we weren't trying to relearn everything. So that's an important thing to think about when you're thinking warehousing. Do I need it? To some degree, every company should be using a warehouse and warehouse functionality. But the big question that comes in is, do I need a WMS, a warehouse management system? Here is where everybody now goes, but isn't this advanced? This is advanced warehousing, but it's an advanced warehousing outside of just your advanced warehousing. So everybody kind of now our words are spinning. They're all like, well, do I have warehouse? Do I have advanced? What do I have? What do I need? So one of the main things that you get with a WMS is this use of scanners. Everybody falls in love with the idea of a scanner. I need a scanner, myself included. Threw my hands up. I was like, oh my goodness, we can have scanners. We can just walk to these, pallets, and we're receiving in 28 pallets at a time. And, I worked for a company that our material was not, I'm not getting in when I say a pallet, it's not one item on that pallet. Within that pallet, we could have 200 items. So we heard the word scanner and we were ready to jump on board. But then we stopped and said, do we need a scanner? What do we gain with the scanners? How is it affecting our business? So let's look at the features. Okay, I can use inventory counts. Awesome. I can do that in base nav. But what changes? What helps me in my warehouse? Well, you get the ability to use multiple users. Any one of us who have tried to do any kind of inventory counts with multiple users on just a base nav functionality understands. You pull up a journal. You either have to delete entries so that you can say, okay, Sam, this is your journal. Only fill in what's on your journal. Jess, this is your journal. Do this. With a WMS, you do gain that function that somebody can just pull in. You're pulling in additional filters, and you can just say register these lines, and it's live. So, as Jen posts item 1, 2, 3, Sam sees it and he goes, yep, I don't have to do 1, 2, 3. I move on to the next item. Receipts and shipments, again, scanners are great. But you have to think about how many users are doing these jobs. What am I gaining? Is it beneficial? If I'm a company that is scanning 1 or 2 items and that's a shipment, that a scanner may be a great option. But if you're a company that has to pull, 1 order or 1 shipment to 1 customer has 80 items on it, not that you can't use a scanner, but it might become a little bit more clunky. So it's things like that that we have to think about with our warehouse management systems. Now, one thing that is great with a WMS is that you're walking through your warehouse. Your receiver is just going. He's like, sweet, I got this. I'll put all this product away. And he walks over to a shelf, and something's not right. While he may have 30 cubic feet, and he's got 30 cubic feet of product, it may not fit. Something may not work because of the shape of the material. So now he has a decision. Do I move this? Do I move what is on the shelf? He decides that this product he's just receiving, he really wants on that shelf, but some of this other stuff he can move someplace else. Well, if we're using scanners, we can do this right on the fly. We just do bam, movement from here to here, scan it, away it goes. If we're just using warehouse with no WMS, chances are you're not using a tablet. You're not using a laptop that's walking with you around your warehouse. You're going to take that material, you're going to hope that that person goes, looks where they're going to put the location, put the material, not physically put it away, walk over to a computer, enter it, then physically walk back and put it away. Now you may ask, why wouldn't they just physically put it away? What's going to happen? They're going to physically put it away. Someone's going to ask them for something. They're going to go handle that. And now they've forgotten that they need to make the movement within the system. So your WMS plays a factor in your efficiency if you find something like that happening on a regular basis. The other piece that you see a lot with WMS is just pallet picking, tote picking. You'll hear all these different ways that people will explain it. So what is it? Again, if you receive pallets, you may prefer to sell in pallets, cases, pounds, whatever It is. But what happens when you have to break it apart? It becomes very, very much a pain in the butt, because my goal is I want to sell it in pallets. I want to represent it in my system in pallets, because 98% of the time I sell it as a pallet. So do I really want to have to know or have the user indicate that this customer has ordered one pallet, which represents 16 cartons? So the client has ordered it by pallet, but we don't have it in our system as a pallet. So now I have to tell Nav it's 16 cartons. Well, what's going to happen is it's going to go, depending on your setups, those 16 cartons, it may not tell you to pull one pallet. It may tell you, if you're running, say, a FIFO or FIFO, that you need to just go and pull 2 from here and 8 from there and 1 from there and 1 from a whole nother place and the balance from someplace else. And now you got users walking all over the warehouse, or you have a user who just goes, well, I know there's a pallet on 15, I'm going to pull that and post it. But they don't change the system to represent that they pulled from only one location. So now our inventory is not in sync with what our warehouse physically has. By allowing the system to recognize those multiple units of measure, the system can say, you've sold it in a pallet. I have one pallet over on 17. Go pull that. While yes, I have one here and 2 there, it's not how I want to sell it. But when it comes time to do movements, now my system may represent and tell me I need to go build out a pallet, because I do have all these little pieces, parts everywhere, and let's pull them back together for organization and gaining space within our warehouse. So these are all great pieces of our warehouse. So, again, the question, do I need a warehouse? Do I need an advanced warehouse management system? What is it that I need? So these are the questions that I often present to people, and they're things to think about. And this will help you decide on what is best for your business, because honestly, we can tell you, oh yeah, I have 8 customers that don't run WMS, and it works great. And then you're identical, you don't need WMS. Or we could tell you the opposite. But your business is your business and functions completely differently than every other business that we know. So our goal is to bring these questions to you. What works best for me and my company? Let's look at these. Am I running multiple locations? Do I ever plan to have other locations? Is there a talk of possibly, maybe even physically moving the location? Maybe we're in rented space. This is a common one that comes in, is we're in rented space. Now our business is changing. We're going to be moving our location because we've either found a better location, a better price, or we're going to buy the physical building. So let's start having these conversations of maybe how our warehouse is configured today is not ideal for what it is in the future. What is our process? Does our process make sense? Again, the buy-in from your warehouse. I cannot stress that part enough. As a person who worked in a warehouse, what did I say? Yeah, my process is fine. I don't need any of that extra stuff. You people are crazy, you're wasting your money. It's said, it's thought. Or on a whole nother project, same thing. Oh, you guys are just spending way too much money on this, but you should be spending your money on this. The person living that process needs to have a voice. Does that voice make sense? Because their long term is still what needs to happen, or ideally where the business is heading, but maybe they're not good at expressing how to get there. So review your process. Review your process with that user. Review your process. Take a salesperson who sits at a desk and answers phones and enters orders, and take them to the warehouse. Walk them through your warehouse. Does it make sense? Does your map of your warehouse make sense? Does the flow make sense? It's amazing how much you can then find out if this process meets your needs of today. How does that process play into your long-term goal? All of these things help you determine, is just recording in an item ledger good enough for your business? It might be. Do we need to have a little bit more advanced talking about, let's dig into those setups. Let's really make sure that we have them. Do they make sense? We might have all of our setups great. We may have them completely wrong, but let's really have that conversation. And it doesn't mean we have to have this huge, let's call a Novia in and let's have a whole process review. No, that's not what this is. It's, let's look at the process. Let's look at our setups. We can look at those. If we have questions, we have questions. We reach out to whoever we need to, and we get those questions addressed. But is that a warehouse functionality? Maybe it feels like it is. It has nothing to do with warehouse. Maybe sales has a question that does affect the warehouse. Something as simple as a salesperson questioning, why is it so difficult to get product out the door at 3:30? They don't understand the process. What makes it difficult? Is it really that it's 3:30 and people are ready to go home? Or is it because you as the warehouse person now have an 18-page order that needs to go out the door, that there needs to be a process put in place for not only when is that order released out to your warehouse, what are the expectations for that order? Do we need to take into account how long does it take to get product pulled? Does it make sense? Again, do we find ourselves running all over this warehouse? Maybe it's just a matter of setting up some picking priorities, and that can start wrangling in how our warehouse runs. So when we hear warehouse, don't just think of, is it this? And we go back and think of this process. We just receive it, we fill it, we pick it, and away we go. There's so much to a warehouse than just this process, and it's important to really question that. So again, I probably do need some type of warehouse, but do I need just the very basic? Do I need some advanced, or do I really need to look at a WMS system? Each one of those is a conversation that needs to be had and thought about, and no decision made quickly. So with that being said, that is all I have, unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Marguerite. We'll give a few moments for everyone to get your questions in. Marguerite, while we're waiting on those questions, is there any common questions that you face time after time?
Really the biggest one is do I need a WMS? That is one, because everybody falls in love with scanners. That the idea of a scanner and working on the fly is something almost every company falls in love with, and users fall in love with the idea, but it doesn't always mean it's the right answer. So that while everybody asks that question, it's always take the time and really look at everything to determine, is it something you really think you need? And it's not saying the answer is yes, and it's not saying the answer is no. It's just, let's set you and your company up for success, but let's do it at the right time. Let's make those changes at the right time. I'll be honest, I had a company that ran out and bought WMS on the day that they opened their company doors. And they still run WMS, but they just say, yeah, we might have jumped on that van a little too early. And then I have another company that we're screaming that WMS may be a good solution, and they're just not ready to pull that trigger. And so it's really company specific and process specific.
Okay, thank you. Good to know. Well, there are no questions that came through the questions panel. If anybody has any questions after the fact, please reach out to Marguerite. She's got her information up there on the screen, or your account manager here at Inovia Consulting, and we would be more than happy to address those questions with you. So I just want to thank Marguerite for the presentation today, and for everybody on today's webinar, or if you're watching on demand, we thank you for taking the time out to join us. And for more webinars, we do have a webinar this afternoon with one of our partners, Anthony Mansour from Experlogic, and he's going to be presenting on digitize your document processes in Dynamics 365 with automation. And you can check out our website for more of our upcoming events, and that's inovia.com/events. And we do have new training workshops for you and your team members to attend. Visit our training workshop page at inovia.com/workshops for more information and to register for the training workshop that fits your role. And to go along with Marguerite's presentation today, we do have a workshop coming up in December on warehousing that Kevin Fawns and Jim Augenstein will be presenting. So check that out and see if that will accommodate your schedule for you to attend those workshops. And don't forget about our Inovia Conversation podcast. Our hosts, Steve Waltz and Jeff Pergolski, have a lot of podcast selections that they've done throughout the past couple of years. So check out that at inovia.com/podcast. Browse through the selection and subscribe so you'll get notified when those new episodes air. And fall is here, which means conferences for us. So check out our conference page at inovia.com/conferences to learn more about the conferences that we will be attending this fall. Coming up in October next month in Houston, Texas, we will be at Community Summit. So if you will be attending that, please visit our booth 822, and we would be happy to have a conversation with you. All right, everyone. Well, thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you soon on another Inovia webinar. Take care, everyone. Thank you, Marguerite.
Thanks, Angie. Thanks, Angie. Thank you, everyone.